Fairly quickly. My great-grandfather, John Henry Holden, was born in 1862. Like most people in those days, youngsters who left school at 16 or so went straight onto the floor of a spinning mill in Lancashire, which in those days was the cotton centre of certainly of England, probably of Europe, and a major one in the world. It was said that the spinning mills of Lancashire could produce enough thread, cotton thread, to go round the entire world twice, and that was before breakfast. That was the sort of volume of spinning that was going on. Anyway, he entered the mill, and he quickly acquired all the skills there, and was recognised by higher people as he was destined for more, and he was moved into management. And it wasn't long before he was in the boardroom. Whilst he was in management, he was courting a young lady called Emma Caldwell. And they were strolling across the moors one night and saw a beautiful manor house in the background, Sharper's Hall. He looked her in the eye and said, "One day I'm going to buy that for you." And about 5 years later he did. And by that time he was chairman of the company he was in. Emma Caldwell, that he married about 4 years later, her father was also in spinning, and my father was able to buy his mill as well. And over the next 10 or 15 years he bought two more, so that by the turn of the century he had 4 spinning mills and probably employing some 2,000 people. After that he had ambitions to build his own. All these were businesses that he bought. He wanted to build his own. And he finally did, but much later on in life. It was in the 1920s, and the mill was only completed in 1927, and he actually died in 1926. So he never saw this mill.
His name, sorry?
Built. Sorry?
Is his name?
His name?
Yep.
John Henry Holden.
Thank you.
So he never saw his dream actually come true. And this mill was so big, it was about apparently 100 metres frontage. And if you imagine that, 4 cricket pitches, it's quite a frontage. And it was the first electric mill in the country. For some reason, for all the reasons, all spinning mills were driven by water from the rivers and so forth, north of Manchester, none south, all in the north. But he decided he wanted to go electric, and this was the first electric mill. Anyway, he died in 1927, and the title went down to his eldest son, and then to his eldest son.
You haven't said anything about the title.
We don't know about the title.
You haven't mentioned the title.
That's a good idea.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, that's a very good idea. 1919, he was awarded a baronetcy, which is actually the lowest in the ranks of hereditary peerages. Dukes, marquises, earls, viscounts, barons, and then baronets. And it was a title that was first created by James I in the 1620s. And apparently then it was a way of raising funds for armies and things. I don't think by the time my grandfather got his title that was the case. But he got his title, and the citation for that title was for services to the cotton industry, and in particular for services to the community. Because he was a man who liked to share his wealth, and he made sure that all his employees were in proper housing, properly fed, clothed, educated, parted with a lot of his fortune doing so. So a lot of his fortune had gone by the time he died. There was sufficient left for him to live well, though, while he did the last 10 years or so. He got his... Oh, that's him. You can take that.
Careful with the wind pump.
That's John Henry Holden.
Appendix A.
What? Appendix A? Well,
Yes.
and that's his coat of arms.
He looks like Grandpa, doesn't he? As in Grandpa Holden. Wow. Yeah, he looks just like Grandpa Holden.
So is the coat of arms linked to the
Yeah.
baronetcy? So
He had the coat of arms. He had that coat of arms created. By this time he had sold Sharper's Hall and built a house in Lee called The Firs. And the title of the family then was Holden of the Firs.
Hold it up, Types. Types, hold it up.
Robin will explain. Yes.
And Toby's ring will show on top of that coat of arms there was a moorcock rising at daybreak in front of the rising sun, which is reputed not to have gone caw, 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 but to have repeated the motto down below, Deo omnia Deo, I owe everything to God. And I think he was quite a religious man, because in the middle of that coat of arms is what they call a covered cup of the last, which is equivalent to the Holy Grail, I think. So he must have been a fairly religious man. He didn't flaunt his wealth, but he lived well. I know through my father and my aunt, his sister, certain things, they both took a lot of the stories to the grave, and I resent that in a way. I'd love to know the whole story. But I do know that he had a butler, a chauffeur, a gardener, a housekeeper, and a cook. He had 5 resident staff, and he looked after them. The butler had livery with silver buttons on. Years later, only a few years ago, we were to come by one of the silver buttons off one of the tunics. There was a collector in America who discovered the button and contacted us and said, would we like one? And that's a silver button off one of the liveries. They suspect it's one of the lower buttons. It's been thumbed an awful lot over the clothes. We have at home cutlery, lovely bone cutlery with that crest built into them. One interesting little side story for you is that we know he had 2 beautiful mahogany cigar chests made, inset into which is a picture of his the mill I told you about, the electric mill. That's built into the cigar box. And we know he had 2 made, one of which my aunt gave to me just before she died, and the other one went missing. We never knew where it was. Would you believe that some 20 to 30 years ago, my then sister-in-law was looking for a present for my brother, went into an antique shop, and there it was in London, sitting in the antique shop. She went into entirely by chance.
That's incredible.
So she was able to buy it back into the family.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yes. Just to finish, I have here the family tree. With John Henry Holden at the top, Toby down there at the bottom.
Good bottom of the food chain, Tobes.
And it goes like this, Tobes. The present baronet, the 4th, inherited the title at a very early age of 9 years old, because his father, who was the eldest son of the 3rd baronet and should have inherited, was a farmer, and unfortunately was trampled to death by one of his bulls. So he was not alive to inherit the title. And his son, his eldest son, Richard, inherited the title in 1970. On the left.
1966.
Only born in the,
Born in 1966.
inherited the title when he was 9, so 75 he inherited the title. Now then it goes like this, Tobes. He has no male heirs. Title can only go down male. All females are excluded from the title. Sorry about that, ladies. So he has no male heirs, so they have to look for another way to pass the title. And if there's nobody below in generations, they bounce back up again. And he has one uncle alive who is eligible to succeed him. He's about the same age as me and is unlikely to be alive when that guy dies. Who's next in line? Me. I'm second in line to that, but I'm not going to be here either when he dies. Who's next in line?
Him.
Him. Now he's about a year different to Sir Richard.
Who's him? You're
And it's a
talking
toss-up.
Richard.
Yeah, Sir Richard is the 4th baronet, but the other Richard here is the 4th in line at the moment. 1, 2, 3rd in line.
3rd in line.
3rd in line at the moment. But he's of a very similar age.
He probably won't make it either.
Here we go.
So the one that is most likely to succeed
Is
Sadly.
Jack over there. Jack over there. But
And he's got no hope of this.
if for any reason Jack isn't around or wishes to disclaim the title, you don't want to be known, we have to look elsewhere. Then I think it comes to you.
Unless you've got a whole fleet of kids by then.
And then
Yeah,
to,
maybe,
and
yeah.
then to you.
If
So I
I'd
think
gone,
you're
you've gone
7th
wrong
in
before
line
me.
at the moment.
Well,
I think I'm right. I don't, if it bounces back 2 generations to my brother, there are another 4 in the way, my brother and his 3 male children. But I think it's
Give me the
seven
word
toes.
and I'll get
Give him the word.
I don't think you've
Filming
done
that,
anything else.
That's really interesting.
Except for how proud you are.
I think you deserve a clap.
Yeah, thank you. Good, Robin.